This is Sandy.
And this is Reza.
Welcome back to another episode of the Stone Cold Silver Podcast, episode 8.
Yep. So a lot of stuff has happened today, or not even today, this week. We actually had a different topic that we were going to discuss, but we decided to hold that off for another week or two. And what we really wanted to talk about was the Eric Garner case, as well as a lot of the riots that are going on in Ferguson right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So right now, I don't. How are things going on in Ferguson? Do you know? Are there still a lot of riots? I haven't really been paying attention to the news, but I know there are a lot of protests going on by you in New York City.
Yeah, I think the media has sort of focused their attention now to riots with regards to the Eric Garner case. I know that it's like day 4 now for riots in New York City. The first 2 days are pretty intense. I don't know if the number of people have died down anyway, but they're definitely still staging the die-in protests in places. I'm sure that Ferguson has died down potentially a little bit, only because of the lack of media coverage.
So are the New York City protests, are those being classified as riots? Are people rioting? Are they looting? Or is it mostly just kind of, protests? I know a lot of people are marching in the middle of the streets and closing down, tunnels and whatnot. Definitely causing problems.
Yeah, it's definitely peaceful protests. I know that cops are definitely arresting some people in the first few days of the protests when they tried to storm the lighting of the tree in Rockefeller Center, which has always been a really big deal in New York. The cops got pretty physical and definitely arrested some people. Some of those being media members, but I haven't heard of any lootings. I think the most effective thing that people can do in New York is just shut down traffic.
Yeah.
You go to just really congested areas like the West Side Highway, Union Square, Times Square, Rockefeller Center, and with all of the tourists everywhere, it's already a really busy time of the year. But if you just start walking in the middle of the street, thousands strong, you're gonna just basically bring the city to a standstill.
So actually, I don't know if I asked you the other day because you came in on a flight back into the city. Did you have problems getting back home?
I did not.
Okay.
There was just normal traffic, but I think it also helped that it was raining really hard, and I'm sure they might have changed the location. I know that either yesterday or 2 days ago they staged a pretty big die-in at the iconic Apple Store right next to Central Park, the one with the glass.
Yep.
Sort of shaped. A couple dozen people, I think, staged a protest in there.
Okay.
But yeah, let's kind of take a step back first.
Yeah.
And
Get into
talk about
what's going on.
Yeah, let's talk about Ferguson.
Okay.
I think the nation and arguably the world was waiting on democracy to sort of work its way through that case.
Right.
Now, the Ferguson grand jury, well, everyone kind of knows the case by now. You can't live in this country without having heard.
I mean, we can just give a quick summary.
Go ahead.
Essentially, there's a 17-year-old boy named Michael Brown.
Yeah.
Larger black man, and he had been stopped by a police officer, and apparently they got into a little fight, like a little altercation, a little scuffle, whatever it was. The cop says that Michael Brown went for his gun. In quotes, eyewitnesses say that they saw Michael Brown, essentially with his hands up or, walking away. The cop says that after kind of walking away, he ran back at him. The cop felt threatened, so he shot Michael Brown, who later died. And so this case went to the grand jury to decide whether they were going to indict the cop on murder charges or not. And it came out that they were not going to seek any punishment for the officer.
Yeah.
So this decision sparked all sorts of outrage and controversy. Even after the shooting, there were a lot of protests and some rioting going on in Ferguson back this summer. And it wasn't until just this past week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess now, when the grand jury decided to not indict the police officer whose name is slipping me right now.
Darren Wilson.
Darren Wilson. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess what we kind of wanted to talk about is what are your thoughts on the grand jury's decision? Do you agree with them? What are your thoughts? And it's not even really just that. I don't think that's the point of the protest. I don't think that's why so many people are upset. I think what this case is kind of bringing to light is that there appears to be no repercussions for police officers when it comes to using violence, killing somebody. So I don't know what have you thought of this case so far?
I think there's a couple of aspects to it. With Michael Brown, it was sort of the witness testimony and testimony on both the prosecution and defense. They were all really, uh, I guess you could, I guess the word is it. Well, they weren't ironclad, right? Like there was a lot of controversy over what was over the version of the truth because both sides had such conflicting stories to tell.
Yeah.
And then with sort of the release of the video of Michael Brown taking the cigarettes and pushing the store employee beforehand, that also caused some grief because, the defense thought that that was one way to impeach sort of the character of Michael Brown, make
Right.
it sound like he was committing a crime and he was already in a state of mind, uh, which would have resulted in the actions later. But then you have to think, there, it's tough.
It is a very tough case to
It's
talk about,
tough.
and
It's tough.
I've talked with people about this too. And the thing, I wonder why it was the Michael Brown case that was kind of that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Why is it that this is the particular case that everyone's getting so upset about,
Right.
and why is it this case that uh, the media won't stop covering? Now,
Right.
obviously,
Because
since then you've had Eric
it's
Garner.
such a right.
Yeah, because the thing about Michael Brown is he's not like a model victim.
Right.
That's how I had seen it portrayed. He's not the model victim, but what it does show is that with the way the case is unfolded, with the back and forth with the witness testimonies, with what the police officers said and what other witnesses have claimed, people are very surprised that this case is not at least going to trial. The fact that the prosecutors say that they don't, or the grand jury said that this is not worth trying right now. Sorry, let me turn that off.
Yeah.
So,
I did read somewhere that um, most sort of grand juries, like when you go to a grand jury,
hmm
the percent of it going to trial is like somewhere in like the high 80s or low 90s.
yeah,
So it's a very rare instance when a grand jury decides not to indict.
yeah,
But on the other hand, grand juries are very reluctant. Now, this is sort of based on statistical, historical sort of tendencies and trends.
hmm
Grand juries very rarely indict police officers.
right. So I also saw that grand juries apparently will essentially do what the prosecutor wants. So if the prosecutor believes that there's enough evidence to try, then he or she can convince the grand jury that in fact they should indict. Now obviously I don't know a whole lot of the details about that, but I guess my thoughts on the particular case, it's there have just been a number of cases where it seems like police officers don't seem to be accountable for their actions, where people have been killed, people have been injured. It seems like police officers are so quick to jump to violence, and I don't want to say all of them, but
Definitely not all
I
of them.
feel like what a lot of people are saying is that if police officers were to wear personal cameras, on their chest, a GoPro on their chest or something, that way they know they're always being monitored. Everything that they do can, like, if there's a case like this, you can always just go back to the video evidence
Right.
and say, oh, you know what, this is what happened. These people are lying. This person was telling the truth. The cop was right. The other people were wrong, or vice versa. And what's interesting about that is, and that's, you then go to Eric Garner, where the case was on camera and that officer wasn't indicted. And that one seems a bit more clear cut to me. It's like that model victim that everyone wanted. That particular case seems like that he was a model victim. Well, I don't know, but that seemed like it should have been more clear cut, and that didn't get the decision that I would have expected.
Right. Now, if we move on to Eric Garner, sort of the main difference between the Garner case and the Michael Brown case is the evidence,
Right.
at least initially. With Michael Brown, there was no video of the incident. So it was a lot of he said, she said. The autopsy reports were also pretty suspect. Um,
Yeah, a whole lot of voices in the crowd with the Michael Brown case, and it became very difficult to really follow where the truth was with
right.
with a lot of the information that was out there.
And as a member of the grand jury, it's impossible for you not to go home and listen to the news or watch the news or read something that'll cloud your judgment. Because in an ideal world, you live in a bubble when you're on the grand jury and you say, you know what, I'm only going to listen to the evidence that's been presented to me.
Yeah,
And then all of these people came out and said that the defense basically, or rather the prosecution, really failed because they allowed the defense. No, it's the other way around, isn't it?
yeah,
It's the other way around. I apologize. The defense basically let the prosecution and the people helping Darren Wilson sort of not get away with murder, but just didn't present their case as effectively as possible.
yeah. I think what this has really done is it's really taken a microscope to a lot of police officers. So now every time I go on Reddit, every single day I see some news story of a police officer abusing their power or a police officer using violence. Just the other day I saw a video, I think yesterday, there was a girl who'd run away from home, and I think
Yeah.
it's not, what I want to stress is that I don't think this is necessarily a black and white issue. I certainly think that there's an element of race involved in a lot of these cases, but I think that there are some people that are really trying to shine the light on police officers, saying that they're not being held accountable for their actions. So this girl she had been stopped by a police officer because apparently she had run away from her home, and I think it was a female police officer. She ended up punching the girl in the face and taking her down to the ground and trying to arrest her. Meanwhile, the girl's mom runs across the street and sees her. I don't know if she had just run away and had been reported missing. I'm not sure what the circumstances were, but the girl's mom had come running over saying that the girl has asthma and has some mental issues, and the girl's on the ground screaming that she can't breathe. You know, make that connection to the Garner case. It's just every time I see one of these some of these videos, I assume or I think that the police officer, some type of repercussion should happen to the police officers that are doing that are committing these actions, and it seems more often than not they are not being held accountable. Now, of course, then people are going to say, well, you're not hearing about those cases because why would you ever report saying, this officer, punched somebody in the face so they were, fired or whatever? You don't hear that all the time. You hear the negatives a lot more than the positives.
Yeah. I think so. Sort of to answer what you were saying, I think race plays a part in it. I think Chris Rock had a really interesting sort of thought on everything. He said it's not sort of like race relations haven't gotten better. It's sort of like both sides have gotten a little bit less crazy. I'm going to pull up the quote while I talk about it, but
Okay.
I think that, I mean, there's also been footage of like a black cop shooting a white man,
Yeah.
and then not getting indicted.
Right.
I do believe that there's a systemic sort of flaw where as a police officer, it's tough because you've been entrusted to protect the community. So you're given sort of extra powers to take on situations that other people aren't really allowed to.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, when we're so quick to sort of crucify police officers for firing and now ultimately killing people, we have to understand that they're in a high stress situation because they're meant to deal with threats. So while I think that police officers definitely do get training to deal with it,
Right.
I think there's been a move to sort of a more militarization of the police force, sort of with the weapons they have, with the fact that more and more people are using SWAT. I think that the role of the police officer has changed from just like the local guy walking the beat and just sort of member of the community. Now, I'm not saying this happened everywhere, but
Yeah.
I'm saying sort of the role of the police officer has now changed to not one of like a fellow member of the community, but now sort of someone who is not adversarial, but like more removed now, so that it's harder for them to. I guess rather it's easier for them to distance themselves and then put themselves in a situation to potentially make a move like this. So that
Okay.
militarization, it hurts,
Yeah.
and it makes people probably pull the trigger faster.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely think that there definitely has to be, or I think there definitely is a race element to it. But yeah, for me, I think I don't know. Let me
Yeah, Chris Rock's quote goes, there's been black people qualified to be president for hundreds of years. If you saw Tina Turner and Ike having a lovely breakfast over there, would you say their relationships improved? Some people would, but a smart person would go, oh, he stopped punching her in the face. It's not up to her. Ike and Tina Turner's relationship has nothing to do with Tina Turner. Nothing. It just doesn't. The question is, my kids are smart, educated, beautiful, polite children. There have been smart, educated, beautiful, polite black children for hundreds of years. The advantage that my children have is that my children are encountering the nicest white people that America's ever produced. Let's hope America keeps producing nicer white people. So that's his view on improved race relations.
yeah.
He's saying that's not a true improvement really at all. It's just that people are nicer. The
Right.
relations themselves haven't changed.
Yeah. That's interesting. Um well, I do find it interesting the way people seem very, or people are very interested to hear what celebrities have to say about these types of issues. And
Right.
then you hear a lot of these quotations being taken by one side or the other side. And that's actually one thing that I do find interesting is that there always has to be, for this, there's one side and there's the other side. And I find it very weird how people are very adamant at getting the other person on the other side. So by the sides, I mean, it's not just like pro police and pro people side. This all of a sudden becomes a political thing where it's a conservative and a liberal debate. It's
Yeah.
a black versus white, and it's very hard to really to see the truth, to see the true meaning behind everything when it comes like that, and people start having all sorts of crazy debates. And I feel like a lot of people miss the point of what people have a problem with when it comes down to that.
Now, I understand why people are trying to make it a political issue. For sure. Training of the police budget, sort of laws to be put in place to deal when a police officer uses force. But I read an article that really resonated with me as to why Eric Garner is more racial than anything else. The Atlantic posted an article that said, "What if Eric Garner was white?" And then he goes, "The Garner case bears some resemblance to that of Cliven Bundy, the Nevada rancher who this spring prevented Bureau of Land Management agents from impounding his cattle after he refused to pay government grazing fees." You remember that guy on the horse, crazy
Yeah.
guy? Crazy is relative. I apologize. I always remember not to call people crazy after listening to Dave Chappelle on Inside the Actor Studio.
Yeah, right.
He just says it's very
Which is,
dismissive.
yeah, it is.
So let me take that back. He goes, like Garner, Bundy was engaged in a form of commerce he believed the government should not tax. Like Garner, Bundy resisted law enforcement's efforts to punish him for it. For many conservatives, this made Bundy a hero in the government that sought to penalize him with tyranny. Right? Like Republican legislators, the Tea Party, they all came to his defense, calling him, basically a true patriot. However, conservatives are responding to the Garner's case with a yawn. And we haven't really heard too much of it from at least the Fox News affiliates about the Eric Garner sort of fallout. It took them 2 days to really put any airtime on it.
Yeah.
They moved immediately from Ferguson into Benghazi, sort of still attacking the government. And it took all of the other major news outlets to cover the Eric Garner decision and the resulting fallout when it became almost a 24-hour news cycle 2 days later for Fox to get on it.
Yeah.
And we haven't really heard too many social conservatives come out to his defense. That's why it's a race issue. And I thought, that is kind of interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
I guess I understand why it can be a political issue in that manner. Actually, I guess I should quickly. We never gave a quick summary of what happened with Eric Garner. I
Okay.
meant to do that.
Go ahead.
So Eric Garner, he's a larger black man. I think he was in his 40s, right? And he was there's a video of this entire encounter. He was approached by this young white officer, and apparently had been accused of selling cigarettes on the street. The Eric Garner is very upset, and he's yelling at the officer, going back and forth, saying, I didn't do anything wrong. You come at me every single day. All of a sudden, another cop approaches him from behind and starts to try to take his hand to handcuff him, and he kind of pulls his hand away, and like almost immediately after that, that officer just jumps on his back and puts him in a chokehold. Just starts, takes his forearm and just drives it into his throat, and starts pulling him backwards. And meanwhile, like 5 other cops just jump on him too. They end up falling back, and he falls onto the ground. Meanwhile, the cop is still choking him, and he's saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, and he keeps repeating, I can't breathe. They finally put him in handcuffs, and it turns out, I think he started seizing there. They took him to the hospital, and he later died. And then this case again went to a grand jury. They were investigating the cop for choking him. I believe the autopsy report ruled it as a murder.
Yeah.
As a direct result from the choking. Went to a grand jury, and the grand jury decided to not indict the cop who had choked Eric Garner.
Right.
And this one happened in Brooklyn, right?
Staten Island.
Staten Island. I'm sorry. Okay, Staten Island. And that's why I was saying earlier. I said this was almost like that kind of model case, because everyone looked at the Michael Brown thing, and he apparently just robbed a store. We don't have video footage of what actually happened. In this particular case, we have video footage of what actually happened. You can go on YouTube and see the video yourself. It's to me it's very disturbing. Like I have my hand to my face, just over my mouth. I couldn't believe it. And I think a lot of people feel the way I do about this case right here. The Michael Brown one, there are a lot of question marks that are there, and for me, I'm a little surprised. And again, I think I talked about this in one of our older podcasts. I said I hadn't paid a whole lot of attention to the specific details of the Ferguson case, to the Michael Brown case, but there's so many questions that you can have about that case. You don't really know what happened. But this case, or I'm sorry, I meant to say that it's a little surprising that the grand jury would decide that it's not even worth trying the officer in that case.
Yeah. It says that city medical examiners concluded that Garner was killed by neck compression from the apparent chokehold.
Mm-hmm.
He was put in the chokehold for approximately 19 seconds. Garner is heard repeating, "I can't breathe," approximately 11 times. I believe 11 times. The medical examiners said neck compression, along with compression of his chest. And then contributing factors include bronchial asthma, heart disease, obesity, and hypertensive cardiovascular disease. I didn't know this, but as a result of Garner's death, 4 EMTs and paramedics who responded to the scene were suspended without pay. Officers D'Amico and Pantaleo were placed on desk duty, and Pantaleo was stripped of his service gun and badge. I believe he's the guy who put him in the chokehold.
Yeah.
Now, while the grand jury decided not to indict him, Attorney General Eric Holder announced that the Justice Department would launch an independent, thorough, fair, and expeditious civil rights investigation. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, that I don't exactly know what that means either. I did hear about that. I won't really comment on it because I don't know what it really means.
Yeah, I have no idea what that sort of means. If there's no indictment, it's I don't know what a civil rights investigation sort of what it would what it would do.
Yeah.
I was also reading that sort of on the New York Police Department's history on chokeholds
Yeah.
that it was banned in November of 1993.
Yep.
Um, Sort of let's see. This is in the Eric Garner situation. There's sort of a group of police officers standing around one of their colleagues and Eric Garner when Pantaleo is putting him in a chokehold, and they're doing nothing to stop him.
Right.
And then it turns out that those officers went so far as to contribute a dishonest sort of incident report where they didn't even bring up the chokehold.
Yeah, I did hear about that one.
It turns out that of the 51,503 cases of resisting arrest charges in 2009, since 2009,
Yeah.
just 5% of arresting officers during that period account for 40% of resisting arrest cases, which is basically one of the leading factors of a more intense sort of police tactics.
Yeah.
I won't go so far as to say police brutality,
Yeah, yeah,
but
just
police officers do cite a resisting arrest as one of the first dominoes to fall,
right.
and sort of ramps up their
Almost aggression, right?
aggression. Right.
Yeah, they come in numbers and they can come with force.
Right. Because I think when you don't do when a police officer feels like you're not following their directions, not only to the T, but how they saw it in their head. So like the Kevin Hart joke,
Yeah.
right? Like I told you to do it, but you didn't do it the way I saw you doing it in my head.
Yeah.
That I believe that puts a fear in the police officer that you're gonna do harm to them. And I feel like because of that sort of ramped up aggression and fear, and now you have a weapon, that it's sort of very easy to see the relationship between the two.
Yeah. So my thought on it is that I feel so police officers are humans just like the rest of us. They're capable of making bad decisions. They're capable of making mistakes. They're capable of letting power get to their head. And no matter how many times people tell me that, there's training, these guys are trained, they know what they're doing, I still find it hard to believe that every single police officer is a model citizen. They mean the best. They mean to do you no harm, because I think that's not true. I don't think that could be true, right?
I think it's impossible for that to be true,
Right.
because you use the word every.
Right. So, and I think that's where I personally feel like a lot of these cases, what they miss. I feel like I don't have numbers to back these up. I don't know if anyone has numbers to back everything up, but I hear too many cases about police officers. They do some questionable action, one making arrest or whatever it is, and they get paid leave, or they just get desk duty and they're able to keep working and keep getting paid. And when they're punished, it's essentially just a slap on the wrist. They're able to go back out there, keep patrolling the streets and doing whatever it was that they were doing beforehand. And I don't like the Eric Garner case. Like, you have 6 officers that were there,
I believe so.
and I just
Good
don't-
amount.
I know it's a bigger man, but I just don't know where. Like, he wasn't going for a weapon. He wasn't like trying to attack anybody. All he did was pull his hand away from the cop who was trying to pull his hands back to arrest him, to put his hands in handcuffs. I just feel like that type of force that brings 6 people and jump on his back and put him in a chokehold just seems excessive to me.
Right. Knowing fully that chokeholds are illegal, and then you see when he jumps on his back, that's the first move that he pulls.
Right, and I think that they didn't use the word chokehold. The reason why he was able to get off, that they said that it was a headlock. is what the tactic was that he
Gotcha.
used. But I mean, I don't know.
He said, "I can't breathe."
I mean, yeah, he said I can't breathe, and I know if you can't breathe, then how are you able to talk, right? But even the autopsy report said that he was asphyxiated,
Right.
like he really was choked.
You can still talk when you can't breathe.
Right.
That's a lapse in logic right there. You can't breathe, so you can't talk. That's inappropriate. I think you can still scream out if you're running out of air. You're just using more air.
Yeah.
You know, guy's pretty big. He definitely. No, I don't agree with that. That if you can't breathe, you can't talk.
Yeah.
I think that's
Just
just. I think that's sort of like that's like fuzzy logic
yeah.
for sure. That is. Um, I think that here's an interesting thing, right? When I went home for Thanksgiving, my dad was watching the Ferguson riots on TV. Now my parents had some views on the Ferguson riots, and I had some views. The interesting thing is, as a whole, the Asian American population hasn't really come out with too many like official views on the matter.
Right.
I think I definitely know there's been a lot of uh, articles written about this, but it's interesting to see the sort of nature of the Asian community during both Michael Brown and Eric Garner.
Yeah.
Asian Americans. I'm an Asian. I guess. Well, I guess I am an Asian American. Born in China, grew up in America. Kind of like first generation immigrants. Um, we're always taught to keep our head down in society. Um, Not to really cause a fuss. Sort of just listen to the rules, follow the rules, and then you sort of become invisible. And they do that so as not to sort of bring more attention than is necessary onto your person. Now, Asian Americans in this country have suffered a lot. I feel like every racial group has suffered a lot. Every ethnic group has suffered a lot in America. Unless you're sort of like a Northern European Protestant. You're basically you at some point in the history of this country, you've been subject to some pretty terrible things. I think that's undisputed.
Okay. Yeah.
What's interesting though is the Asian American community doesn't can't it's impossible for the Asian American community to align with the black struggle in this country because the black struggle is so deeply rooted in not only the founding of this country, but sort of how deep the tensions go. Now, and on the other side, the Asian Americans can't sort of side with the white community because we're not seen as white Americans.
Right.
So it's sort of one of those things where is the Asian American community is it more detrimental if we don't say anything public, sort of condemning something or saying how unfortunate this all is, or just staying quiet? Do we is it condoning the behavior if we stay silent?
I see what you're saying. I've always found that kind of interesting because a lot of people will say that they're like, well, why doesn't this community come out and say something? And I always wonder, well, who are these people that are coming out and saying something? Like, why are they my representative? I didn't vote them into anything.
Right.
So because one dude said this about this topic, that doesn't mean anything to everybody else. So I mean, maybe that's part of it, right?
Everyone's joining groups.
Everyone's in a group somewhere, right? No, that's it. That is interesting, and you are right. Like the black white struggle, it is something it's so deeply rooted into the foundation of this country that maybe other ethnic groups don't feel like it's their place to say anything. Just because you don't say anything doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with this side or the other side, right? You can kind of be neutral in it.
Sure.
It's not. I mean, it's like one of those cases. Well, it's not my battle, right?
Right, but how many times can you say it's not my battle There's this old somebody was telling me the story. It was about some group during the Holocaust, and they said when the Nazis came for the Jews, I didn't say anything,
Yeah.
and then when they came for the Gypsies, I didn't say anything, and then when they came for this group, I didn't say anything, or that group, I didn't say anything, and then they came for my group, and no one was left to say anything.
Right.
But that's a pretty intense story. You know,
Yeah.
it's like if it isn't our battle, is it fair? Is it fair to just sort of be dismissive and say it's not our battle when this stuff sort of does affect us in a way?
I understand. Um, I don't know. Like I would. I guess I kind of go back to what I said earlier. Like who would be the like the Asian American representative that would come out and say give their support to one side or the other.
I'm kind of happy we don't have one.
Right, but then even like Latinos, like is there some representative? I feel like you have on the African American, the black side. There's Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. Those are the two people look to
Right.
for their side. Well, then what about white Americans? Who's their representative? Is it just anybody in Congress? Whatever senator wants to say something about this issue? Are they presenting the thoughts and ideals of all the other white Americans? I just find it very hard to I find it very hard to really look at those issues and say that this community supports this side because one person says something. I feel like if we really want to say one community believes or supports one side, then you'll either see those people protest in the streets or you won't, And I've
Yeah.
seen a whole lot of different races out in the streets protesting in
Oh,
Ferguson
sure.
and New York City. So
Oh, sure.
it's certainly that's why part of what I'm saying. I don't necessarily think that it's just a black and white issue. I do think that there's this police accountability issue, though I definitely think that there is the racial issue is
Yeah.
definitely there, and it shouldn't be ignored.
Yeah. It's just a very unfortunate thing because the acts of a statistical anomaly amount of police officers. That's what I have to call it, because I won't even say like. I have to believe that the overwhelming majority of police officers in this country are good men and women.
Oh yeah, for sure,
The overwhelming majority. I'm saying something like
90 some
almost
percent,
all.
right?
You have to.
Yeah,
You have to believe that.
yeah,
Because if you don't believe that, then we live in a much more terrifying society.
right,
Now, maybe I'm naive and we already are living in said society. Maybe it isn't an overwhelming majority. But I personally have to think that we live in a society where the overwhelming, just a monstrosity sort of percentage of police officers are out there to do good, are sort of decent men and women who are out there to
right,
protect us, who know what to do.
yeah,
But you take any sort of normal human being put in a situation to defend the community, and a situation happens, I just think it's any number of factors could lead to any number of sort of results.
yeah,
And while it's really unfortunate that these two men died, it's still have to believe that the police are good. What I don't like is that there is no accountability of police officers anymore,
or little at least, right?
or very little.
Like I know that there are cases where the police officers they're punished what people would call fairly, but there are just these cases that seem to are those the ones that slip through the cracks? Are these the ones that slip through the cracks where these become these high profile cases where everyone's talking about it and everybody then feels like police officers have no accountability for their actions. Here's the thing though, like they sign up for a job that puts them in these types of situations all the time. And the crazy thing about being just a regular everyday citizen, you don't find yourself in these you don't have to deal with people breaking the law. You don't have to, deal with people that are in violent outbreaks or whatever you want to call it. They are in these situations, and every single time that they have to interact with somebody, they should they're probably under a microscope. They may feel that they're under a microscope, right? They
Yeah.
The way that they act, or I'm sorry, I feel like a lot of these cases they have to really approach with caution. You never know what somebody's capable of and what somebody will do. So you're putting yourself in a potentially dangerous situation every single time you have to interact with somebody, whether you're pulling them over or you're, in Eric Garner's case, you're talking to someone accusing them of selling illegal cigarettes. You just don't know how they're going to react to what it is that you're saying. And while he was very upset and young with the cop, from what I saw in the video, he never looked like he was going to attack anybody, But maybe
Yeah.
they felt like he had the potential. He was a big man. It's impossible not to prejudge people, right? When you come up to somebody, you look at their size, you look at how they're dressed. Some people will look at the color and your race and create some type of judgment about who you are and what it is that you're capable of doing. And I think that's what a lot of people are upset about in terms of the race relation. It seems like anytime a cop approaches a black man, a young black man, they begin to feel threatened, like they're these people might be a threat.
Yeah.
And whether that's true or not, if that is true, that's unfortunate, and you feel like you're set up to fail essentially in this type of
Right.
scenario.
Because all the training in the world can't undo the life and background that these men and women lived and grew up in,
Right. And on
that
top of
that
that,
form their thinking.
right. And like if you work for a police department that is in a you basically patrol the streets of a low income neighborhood that's predominantly black, you immediately, well, you as a cop might start to have predisposed judgments about those people. And so when you see one of them on the street, you might start, getting some ideas. And how do you break that,
How do you break that cycle?
Right. It's I don't know.
I guess the question is, how long or how far removed do we have to be as a society from sort of the civil rights movement for it to not be uh I don't want to say for it to be forgotten, but I mean it in a way where it's a positive, right?
Where you almost kind of feel like
Like we came from a dark place,
right.
but now society is in a much better sort of
Almost like it's no
standing.
longer a separate community. You're just all Americans, right?
Right.
Like I've seen people refer back to Irish people back in old America in the 1800s. They would refer to them today. People would refer to Irish people back in the 1800s as the black or the black Americans of the 1800s. Obviously,
Mhm.
there was slavery and whatnot, but apparently Irish people were treated the same way that, or this similarly to how blacks are treated today, or maybe before the civil rights movement. But
Yeah, it
but
was.
nowadays,
They definitely did not enjoy high standing
right.
in society.
But nowadays, if you're Irish, you're just white in America. You're just an American, a white American. That's it. That history is kind of gone almost, right?
Hmm.
We know about it, we hear about it, but I don't know. I mean, is it just the fact that it's easier to say, "Oh, hey, there's," it's such a quick observation. You can see the color of my skin, and immediately say, "Oh, that's that." Is that ever going to go away, or do we have to go another like 100 years or so? I feel like a lot of people forget how close the civil rights movement really was. Segregation was just like, the people that were alive during segregation are still alive right now.
Oh, absolutely.
So the people that fought those battles, they're still around. You see what's going on today. And it's not like all of a sudden this, segregation was eliminated and everybody was like, oh, you know what, just kidding. We're not racist anymore. It didn't work
Right.
out like that.
Right.
There were still a lot of problems, a lot of troubles, a lot of fights that had to be fought after that. and I think that's still going on today. We still see the residual effects of slavery and segregation in the fact that Black Americans, like, I don't know the statistics, but impoverished people, low income families, like how many of them are African American?
I think some would argue that the percentage and placement of the black community in lower income neighborhoods is an institutional thing.
Yeah,
That poverty itself is institutionalized. It's very hard to break out of the cycle of poverty, and the average black family starts lower due to sort of the racial sort of what the differences in race really do.
yeah,
I think that's I think that you're right though. The people that were living in a segregated society are very much still alive, and those are the people that educated sort of our parents' society, our parents' sort of generation.
right.
Now, we'd like to think that our generation, which has seen so much progress, you know, from stuff like gay marriage, legalization of marijuana, these are some pretty big things.
Yeah,
You would have to think. But is our generation ready to take the mantle and move beyond race? I like to think so, but I also am totally ready to be disappointed.
yeah,
It's a factor of where you live, it's a factor of how you were raised. Because, in a sense, we're all brainwashed, you know?
yeah,
We're all, the way we're raised is the way that we were trained. Now, I can't think that we're all trained the same way, and therefore we're all sort of subject to like lapses in either logic or very much fallible. I just I hope that our generation or maybe our kids' generation will be not only removed enough from sort of true instances of either segregation or these like racial I don't want to say infighting. That's a really cheap word,
yeah,
but it's you would hope, right? You would have to hope.
yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. I feel like with these two cases, you know, the Michael Brown, the Eric Garner case, I think a lot. I don't like seeing the back and forth, the oh, you know, when you look at the race issues, then people start to point to the black on black crimes and say, well, why don't people talk about this, and why is that not an issue? I just don't know why we have to dilute or remove ourselves from the issue that's at hand. I think that this, the police accountability is the issue that we should be focusing on. Now, I also don't. It's the same thing where we say. I'm sure that people are focusing on these issues, but it's not something that's so easy to fix.
Hmm.
I feel like we need to. I don't know. I mean, I think there needs to be a serious discussion about it, though. I don't know if I'm presenting it properly, but I'm not sure what could be done. It's obviously not an easy solution, or there's no easy solution to this problem. But I think it,
I think both sides are out for blood,
yeah, and
for
I
lack of
guess
a better term.
I think the unfortunate truth that there is with this is that if whenever there's a problem, if this is in fact a real problem, nothing will ever come of it until something like this happens, until people start dying, and it's just the way we work, right?
Yeah. Um, I think since both sides are out for like punitive damages, any sense of true coming together and working out a peace resolution has long since been discarded. I think it's always sort of like he punched first, she punched second. It doesn't matter who punched anymore. It's I think we're well beyond that, and that's sort of the tragic nature of it.
Like how I guess how would a solution to this be formed? You know, it's not like it's this is more of like I don't know that this is where it does become a political issue. I guess it's then how do you evaluate police officers in these types of situations? Because if we actually think that there's something wrong, that means that something has to be changed, and it doesn't necessarily mean that anybody who's protesting or any of these, the black leaders have to be present in these types of talks. It could be something that would just happen,
Right,
you know, over on Capitol Hill.
right. Well, nothing's getting done in Congress.
Yeah, nothing. What is their disapproval rating? Like 90, 95? I think it's
Right.
like 90.
I was telling you before. I was listening to that Logic song, "Dead
Hmm.
Presidents 3." He's like a young rapper, and he goes, "If the opposite of pro is con, what's the opposite of progress?" It's the political sort of landscape in America is so broken that it easily breeds sort of apathy, but that's sort of the dangerous self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because then more and more people become apathetic, less and less people become active in government.
Yeah.
It gets worse and worse.
Yeah. I I don't know. Politics is something that I really struggle to like follow actively and feel good about following. It's something that I'll keep up with because I feel like it's my responsibility to know what's going on in the world. But when you, I don't know about you, but if I'm paying attention to I just can't stand how malicious both parties can be toward one another.
Right.
I don't want to say it's just the Republicans because it's really not. You
Oh, it
know,
absolutely isn't. I
there's
mean,
it's just it to me it's just like let's rather than showing progress, let's just shame the other side so that the American people lose confidence in that other side and then they'll vote for us. And it
sure.
just keeps going back and forth. And I mean, obviously things must be working because I'm still here living a pretty comfortable life, right? You're still here living a pretty comfortable life, but I just feel like there's so much more that could be done, so much better that could happen in this country.
What's so all that aside, what are your thoughts on people sort of posting their views on Facebook?
See, that's the thing. I really I haven't posted anything on Facebook about these issues, and I feel like a lot of people are misconstruing the issue. I don't know if people. I mean, I certainly think like we've kind of discussed it. There's a lot of different sides to this argument. There's a lot of different things that people are focusing on. So whether there's the police accountability, it's the race relations, whatnot. But I think a lot of people are also getting very upset, they'll go on Facebook and they'll try to present the evidence to the cases and saying why are these people rioting. It doesn't make any sense. First of all, I don't want to say that I promote any of the rioting or the looting. I think protests are just fine, but I think that the rioting is kind of a natural evolution of the protest when you have that many people
And it
that are
sucks, right? Because it takes away a lot of accountability of
yeah.
everyone else who's out there for whatever reason that they're out there.
Right, and you want to promote good, and you're out there protesting. You want to bring the attention to this case, and all of a sudden, people start looting, and that's what you start focusing on. Then all of a sudden, you have the black community is out looting because one member of their community was killed by a cop, and he had just robbed somebody, minutes before he was killed, something like that. I just think that a lot of people don't fully understand the arguments why people are upset about everything, and maybe it's we talked about it before. I'm a black American. I don't really have any bad interactions with police officers though. But I will tell you that if I ever do see a police officer walking around, I start to feel a little, I start to think about how do I look right now? What am I doing? Who am I walking with?
Because one could classify you as a model victim.
Yeah, and it's I don't know if other people feel that way, I'm sure a lot of people, when you're driving, you see a cop, all of a sudden you check your speedometer, you start to make sure you're not doing anything wrong. Is that a bad thing? But when I'm out in public, I start to see these cases and I start, more and more, I start to feel, hey, that actually could be me.
Right.
The case where the dude jumped out of his car and the cop asked him for his license, so he went back and the cop shot him.
I think
Who was fired, by the way. I think he was sent to jail for a few years.
so. I understand what you're saying when you're out in public and you see a police officer, you start to feel that way. And I think it makes sense because we all sort of tend to check our behaviors, like when we're driving or whatever. Are we following the speed limit when cops are around?
Yeah.
Because they're there to enforce the rules. Now, most of the other sort of racial groups out there, as of late, with regards to sort of police interactions, haven't haven't experienced sort of the degree of brutality or force rather. Let's go with force
Okay.
with the type of police force that they've sort of used. So it would make sense that as a Black American, you would think, you know what, that could be me because statistically, it's happening more to you.
Right.
So that does enter the realm of possibility.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, is it because um, black Americans are the ones committing the most crime? But then, if even if that's the case, it still seems as if police officers are, they, I don't know. It seems it to me. It seems like they are looking more. They have their eye out on more black Americans because they're more likely to commit these crimes, or potentially more likely. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the
Right.
statistics are and whatnot.
Well, the thing with that also, and the NFL player. Do you remember who the NFL player who wrote that really long Facebook post? Remember what his name was?
No, he is the what's his name from the New Orleans Saints. I'm gonna look it up really fast.
Um, yeah, look it up for me. He basically said how like disappointed he is also in the Black community and music and culture for sort of promoting sort of not violent behavior, but negative behaviors in general.
Yeah, Benjamin Watson.
Benjamin Watson.
Yes.
It was a really powerful post because he basically called on everybody. He was talking about how conflicted he was.
Yeah.
Do you have the post up?
Yes. I have it on CNN, but I have a few an excerpt. But he basically said, like, I'm introspective because sometimes I want to take our side without looking at the facts in these situations. Sometimes I feel like it's us against them. Sometimes I'm just as prejudiced as people I point fingers at, and that's not right. How can I look at white skin and make assumptions, but not want assumptions made about me? That's not right.
Right. I mean, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think it makes sense that there's fault on both sides, and that when you're out here just pointing fingers, it's you're not gonna nothing's getting gained,
Yeah.
and it sucks because like you said, sort of everyone's making split second decisions on first impressions when they look at somebody,
Yeah.
and it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible, but that's not something you can change.
Yeah.
That's just human nature.
I really do wonder whether it's something that'll change with time. Whether we'll just kind of, everyone will just kind of be equals. I would love for that to happen.
One day,
Uh,
potentially, when we're all
yeah,
dead.
one day. Some people are less optimistic about that, but to me, like I said, I feel like it still hasn't been long enough since legally blacks and whites have been equals. And so I think that maybe in like 100 years, and that's a long time, right?
It is a long time.
I wonder, because of the nature of our world today, how connected we are, as well as I guess the amount of the separate, like, the black culture is very different from I don't know, American culture, what do you want to call it, but maybe by having such a distinct culture, maybe it won't be like the way I envision. Maybe everyone won't just kind of be the same, interact with everybody. Is that fine too? I don't know.
I think I think black culture definitely. I guess more accountability has to be put on it in the aspect of stop stop memorializing sort of that type of behavior. Stop promoting that type of behavior
Yeah.
in music, in movies. It's all it does
I
is
mean,
it
even just the way
leads
you present yourself too. It doesn't even have to just be, yeah, like not even
right.
just the artistic.
Well, sort of yeah, but what I'm saying is like the whole art
Yeah.
sort of channels sort of manifests itself in society by how you dress, how you talk, how you act. All it does is lead to these tragic deaths of young black men and women. It why you're being a martyr for no reason. It's not even a case to be worth martyring for. You know? Why why are you this is a gross generalization, but why are we looking to promote sort of anti society or anti sort of police behaviors in like the youngest generation who have the most to live for? I think that a lot of futures get cut short because they're promoting the wrong thing, but it looks the sexiest on TV or through music, talking about selling drugs or sort of like gang violence, all these types of things, committing murders. It sounds nice in 8 or 16 bars, but you're really going to go out and emulate a lifestyle that got created either in a sound room or in a boardroom. It's so tragic
Yeah.
because all lives matter. The playoff of Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. It's such a it just sucks, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so. It's
It's
tough to really.
tragic.
It's
It's
tough to
tragic.
really comment on a lot of it. Yeah. I don't know. I think I obviously agree. The promotion of like the of drugs and violence and anti-education. We've talked about it. We've seen videos with people where young black kids are criticized for speaking properly, for speaking
Right.
proper English, for trying in school.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not one. It's not just one side's fault. I think it's both sides' fault in all these cases. Something has to be done about it. I don't know if any law is going to fix it. I think it's just really going to be about time and hopefully people's progression.
No, I understand that a lot of like major sort of iconic music and act like music stars, rap stars, movie stars come from impoverished backgrounds. Jay-Z, Nas, these guys, Ti, all of these people started out sort of quote unquote hustling drugs
Right.
because that was the sort of only outlet that they had.
Yeah. I mean, you rap about what you know.
You
That's your
rap
life.
about
You,
what you
you rap
know.
about that. I mean,
But
Biggie even talked about it because he used to be a drug dealer too,
right.
and his first CD was a lot about his life in the drug game.
Yeah.
But then he said he struggled with his next CD because he wasn't broke anymore. He couldn't sit there and keep rapping about being broke because he had money.
Right. It's it's like I you should like that's obviously a part of the music game and the rap game and all that. But I hate when Dave Chappelle says, I mean, I understand what he's saying. I don't hate that he says it. I love that he says it. I just hate that it has to be said. When he goes, you have to either rap or play basketball, get to dancing to get out of your community. That shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the only two outlets that you promote. There is nothing wrong with doing well in school and building a solid future for yourself. If
Yeah.
anything, that's the most honorable thing you can do
Yeah.
because then you bring everybody out, right? In a way that's socially acceptable.
in a way that's much easier than having to be a professional athlete or musician or
Right,
actor or whatever it is. It's, you know, there's enough to go around, so to speak.
right. And it benefits you and it benefits generations after you if you set a good example.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's always interesting, right? Like the common sort of racial stereotype of Asian Americans is oh, you guys are just super smart,
Yeah.
right? It's like none of us are naturally smarter. I think it's just sort of our parents figured out when they came here, when they immigrated here, that you know what, the best way for you to succeed is to do well in school because then that leads to better higher education options, which leads to better employment options, which leads to sort of better socioeconomic levels. That just means that it works for a particular racial group. It shouldn't be only subject to that group or only available to that group. I think it shouldn't be something to be looked down upon, and that's what's tragic because a lot of because that message gets missed in the rap game and in society in general. Like that happens across sort of every channel, right? You're out there, you want to be hard, you want to be tough. Nobody wants to be seen as a nerd, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end of the day, you look at it and nerds don't nerds don't end up that bad. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just saying that there's more than one way. But
Yeah.
sometimes in the community that you grow up in, it's not available.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does suck, right? You really are a product of your environment. Sometimes you were born into a very unfortunate situation,
Right.
and if you were, say, born in, into a different situation, you could have excelled in whatever it is that you wanted to do. But say you grow up in another society or another community, another group, another family, and you might not have that same push from your parents and your friends and whatnot. You might not have the same resources that are available that would have been available to you, and it sucks. 'Cause you'd like to believe that anybody and everyone could rise up and and achieve, but
That's
I
just not
think
the
I think you
case,
and I
right?
both know, yeah, that's not reality. There's no way to make that reality. There's always going to be somebody who has. I mean, unless you want to go with the idealistic communism, right? There's no way to make that happen. The unfortunate thing is that it seems like some people don't have those same type of resources, and they're born they're born to fail.
Yeah. You're right. When you're right, you're right. When you're right, you're right. Yeah, I just we'll have to see where what happens to in this Eric Garner case and sort of when is because we thought that Ferguson would be the tipping point,
Yeah,
and in some cases it was, and in some cases it wasn't. And then you thought, well, Eric Garner, that has to be it. I'm watching it right now. This video has gone beyond viral. Everyone knows about it because everyone got to see, sadly, the last moments of his life, and everyone thought that, or most people thought maybe that's a tipping point. In some cases, it was. In some cases, it wasn't. What has to happen? What's next? I'm afraid to find out.
yeah,
I'm genuinely afraid to find out. That's it for me.
yeah. Me too. The deep one this week.
Had to.
Yeah,
I can't live in this society and not have thoughts on it.
right, right. I agree with you.
Hmm. All right. I guess that's it.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening to
yeah,
us ramble on this week.
yeah.
Um, Again, my name is Sandy.
And this is Reza.
Thanks for listening.